You have just finished the star chart and you are welcomed with open arms to the Steel of the Path. You load up E Prime once again and simply slap enemies with your wet noodle of a weapon. Or you just get one shot over and over again. Well, my lovely Tenno, don't worry, I will be going through everything you need to make Steelpath easier and start shredding enemies. This video will also be for those of you who have progressed a little and are just wondering why you cannot survive or do enough damage. Let's get into it. Just a quick disclaimer though, I am going to assume that you have a basic understanding of modding and how elements work in Warframe. So if you're someone who is watching this video and is completely lost, I would recommend you go and watch a more beginner focused video first to get caught up to speed. Okay. You've transitioned from Star Chart into Steelpath. First, you need to understand that transitioning into Steelpath in Warframe is meant to be hard and you are supposed to be undergeared unless someone has helped you and guided you. You will need to not dive straight into Steelpath when you unlock it. I know, it's a bit weird. You will be required to start farming a few things first. You need more damage and more defensive layers. The first thing you need to go and do is farm your Arbitration Mods, Galvanized Mods, Adaptation, and Rolling Guard. Luckily for us, you actually gain access to arbitrations much earlier now. Once you've completed a task in the Pluto to Eris Junction in the Star Chart, you gain access to this lovely game mode. In these special missions, you will find arbitration drones that will drop Vitus Essence. Farm Vitus Essence, head on over to the Arbiters of Hexus in a relay, and start gathering your galvanized mods. If you'd like an order of priority, I would say get Adaptation and Rolling Guard first, your multi-shot galvanized mods, condition overload type galvanized mods like aptitude shot and so on, all melee galvanized mods, and then the crit mods. Once you have these, great, now you can level them up as much as you possibly can. A rank 6 to 8, depending on your Ender reserve, will be perfectly fine. But slowly work towards maxing all of them because they are incredibly important and you'll be using them forever and ever. Focus on the multi-shot ones first and then slap on the multi-shot mods on your primaries and secondaries, and now you already have a massive damage boost. Adaptation and Rolling Guard are just super helpful in Steelpath for your squishier frames. Okay, arbitrations are covered. Let's talk defensive layers. This is completely frame dependent. Some frames that you use will just naturally be super tanky and you do not need to worry too much about this at all. For those of you who are running frames that are squishier and you would like them to be a bit tankier, then this is for you. First, decide what method you'd like to use to survive better. I have just made a video going over all of the ways to survive easier in Steelpath, so please, when you have time, go and watch that video and pick which one you like. But as a summary for you watching this video, step 1, decide on Adaptation or Rolling Guard. Personally, I really like Adaptation, but you give it a try and see which one you survive with more. Then, to take it further, you can decide the different methods of surviving. You can go for shield gating. For this, you need Brief Respite, the Aura, and preferably an Augur mod in your build. This converts your energy cost of abilities when you cast them into shields, allowing you to survive easier. Shield tanking is the go-to option that I would personally recommend, but it comes down to personal preference. Here you make use of Adaptation and Arcane Aegis. The beauty of this method is that you literally need a rank 0 Arcane Aegis and it would work perfectly fine. It's minimal effort that is super effective. You can make this better by pairing this with frames that already have innate damage reduction through their abilities, and you can put on Brief Respite to help with maintaining your shields as well. Next is health tanking. This consists of using armor and scaling your health. Adaptation again for damage reduction, running Umbral mods to scale health, strength, and armor, although I will say this is expensive to run, so I wouldn't recommend diving into a triple Umbra setup or double Umbra setup straight away. And then you could go Arcane Guardian as a budget option. For the most part, using Adaptation or Rolling Guard and using one of these methods for defensive layers is more than enough in early Steelpath. Realistically, your Warframe should carry you, depending on the frame, of course. One of the biggest things that people don't really speak about much when it comes to Steelpath and Warframe in general is being able to cast your abilities as much as you can without energy problems. This is where I would recommend putting Equilibrium on the majority of your frame builds unless the frame already has very good energy sustain. I would then recommend farming Synth Deconstruct to put on your companion. This increases the chance of dropping health orbs, meaning equilibrium procs more often, meaning that you can just have much better energy sustain and you're good to go to cast your own abilities. Play around with these methods and see what works for you. But please don't try and invest heavily into these defensive methods just yet. Try and go for the budget options if possible and see how they feel. And that is defensive layers in a nutshell. And if I can ask that you could smash that like button, it really helps spread the video out to the algorithm. Thank you so much. Let's talk damage. You need to do more damage. That is one of the biggest priorities when moving into Steelpath. This depends on the weapon, of course. It depends on how good your weapon is and how you go about building your weapon, what elements, and so on. I want to make this very, very clear from the start, and this applies to Warframes as well. You do not need primed mods to do enough damage. The amount of damage you do ties directly into how you go about modding your weapon and the tools that you can utilize to help you deal more damage. For your weapon builds, putting the galvanized mods on for multi-shot and galvanized steel for your melee is already a huge DPS increase. Normally, in Star Chart, you would have your base damage scaling through the respective mods like Serration, Hornet Strike, Pressure Point, and so on. Now, you will need to keep these mods on as you start to do your first few missions, and that is because you don't have your arcanes. I would highly recommend farming your Steelpath incursions to start getting Steel Essence. You can slowly start farming the arcanes as well from the Steelpath acolytes. A nice crit-based framework for someone who does not have the arcanes just yet would look like this. A status-focused setup for weapons with high status chance would look like this. Now, for the frameworks that I just shown and also for what I'm about to show, please understand this is just a framework. It does change per weapon. So please understand that you can change out the builds or anything like that. It's not something that you have to stick to. It's just to give you an idea. Like I said, your number one priority right now is farming your Steelpath arcanes. Primary Merciless, Deadhead, and Dexterity are incredibly important, and it's the same thing with secondaries as well. These arcanes will now be your means of scaling your base damage in your setups. There are many frameworks when it comes to making builds with any weapon, but generally speaking, a budget Steelpath build would look like this. This focuses more on crit, covers multi-shot, fire rate, elements, and we have our base damage scaling through the arcane. For a weapon that is more status focused, this is what the build framework would look like. Another mod that is incredibly handy to use is the Elementalist mods, especially if you are making use of a damage over time status effect in your setup or if you're opting for blast. Again, change the elements to what you want, it's just a framework. For melees, however, you'll have access to melee arcanes a bit earlier than Steelpath, and hopefully you farmed a few by now. Honestly, this does come down to personal preference and what you like. For flat damage, melee exposure is just absolutely godly for most melees. Otherwise, melee influence and afflictions are just absolute cheat codes in this game to do ridiculous damage with minimal investment. Personally, I find that most melee builds follow a very similar framework. Here is one that will work on most, but please, again, take it with a pinch of salt. I hate to keep plugging videos, but I have made a 3-part series going over how to mod anything in Warframe that will teach you the frameworks in depth and help you to understand them. Some general mods that I would recommend you get if you have not yet done so is the 60/60 elemental mods are incredibly handy to help with certain damage over time setups. All of your corrupted mods are just handy to have. And like I said, Elementalist mods are also very, very good. Great, so we have the frameworks out of the way, but maybe you feel like you're not doing enough damage or just don't understand how to do more damage. This is where elements come into play. Using the right elements in Warframe is crucial, especially when you're starting out in Steelpath. You don't have access to all the fancy weapons, you don't have access to all the fancy mods and different tools. When you start to unlock some more overpowered weapons and make use of different mechanics, then you don't need to worry too much about what element you run. But one thing I will say is it is important to switch out the elements for the respective factions that you are fighting against in the beginning of Steelpath. And it is also very important to focus on damage over time status effects to help you. Good elemental combos to go for are, of course, Corrosive Heat. Viral and a slash-based weapon is also still pretty viable. Flat Toxin for Corpus or Magnetic even. And of course, you can dabble in other elements for other factions, just you have a look and see which ones work. The next key thing to start doing more damage is making use of certain Warframe abilities. Many Warframe abilities help you deal more damage by armor stripping enemies, which is a fantastic way to just deal more damage against enemies that are armored. Some abilities just outright give your weapons a fat damage boost or applying damage vulnerability onto enemies. You get the idea here, it's important to use your Warframe's abilities that actually help you deal more damage. This ultimately leads me onto the Helminth segment. The Helminth segment is incredibly important in Warframe. Slowly working through this segment and subsuming Warframes is high priority for someone starting out in Steelpath. By now, you would have had access to this for quite some time, but it's important for you to start focusing on it to get it out of the way. There are many good subsumes, but a few ones that I would highly recommend are Rhino's Roar for increasing your overall damage with abilities and also acting as a double dipping damage increase with damage over time status effects. Mirage's Eclipse, Banshee's Silence for crowd controlling enemies and silencing them, Grendel's Nourish for more energy sustain and viral damage increase, Jade's or Phantom Eyes for armor stripping and slowing down enemies, Nova's Null Star for damage reduction, Volt's Shock ability for using his augment Shock Trooper, Gildren's Pillage for shield gain and defense stripping, Necros's Terrify for armor stripping and scaring enemies away. These are just a few that I would recommend. Realistically, you need to get all of these subsumes, so don't be afraid to just start racking them up and trying them all out, especially as you start farming the primed version of said Warframe. The Helminth segment is such a great way to help you pick up the slack on certain Warframes with their defensive ability or damage increasing ability. It's why it was put into Warframe in the first place. It fills the gaps of certain Warframes to make them significantly better or provide something that you are looking for. Which of course leads me on to Archon Shards, a massive part of Steelpath. Archon Shards allow you to increase some of your ability stats like strength and duration, and also have the potential to gain a huge damage increase from them. They provide quality of life buffs like casting speed, parkour velocity, more energy, shields, and just so much more. Casting speed is a massive quality of life feature in Warframe in general. Parkour velocity is just a bonus and it won't really help you survive better or deal more damage, but it's just nice. Start stacking up your Archon Shards via Temporal Archimedia, Deep Archimedia, Netracells, Archon Hunts, and the 1999 calendar. Also, working towards the Coalescent Fusion segment to gain access to the Emerald, Topaz, and Violet Archon Shards. Overall, the Helminth is something that benefits you greatly in Steelpath. Next up is companions. Please do not sleep on companions. These guys are insanely powerful and incredibly important in keeping you alive and providing utility buffs that make your life easier. What companion you decide to go for really does come down to your personal preference, what you have available, and so on. Making use of bond mods will make your Steelpath experience a lot better, since Deconstruct is a must-have if you're using Equilibrium. And I know this sounds so obvious, but please make sure that your companion has vacuum or fetch. It's just a must-have in Warframe. Companions can also deal lots and lots of damage with the right setups. They distract enemies, provide you with unique buffs. I will be making a top companion list very soon. Because there are so many companions and just different ones entirely, I would like to at least give you a framework that you can work towards. Robotic companions would look like this. This will cover all of the basics, excluding the specific mods tied to the companions, unique abilities, and some bond mods that you can choose. Beast companions will look something like this. Fill the mod slots as you gain more and more things, or use what you have available. And also feel free to change up whatever you want, please. I can't stress this enough. Up next is Focus Schools. This is so underrated in helping you through your Steelpath experience. Investing into Unaru Poise will help you drastically, especially if you do not have access to Prime Sure-Footed. This stops you from getting knocked over. Vazarin is just a fantastic way to survive easier if you invest into something like Protective Sling and Guardian Shell. Slowly working towards finishing your waybounds is also so important in Steelpath, especially gaining access to Last Gasp. Do not sleep on Focus Schools, they help you drastically. Operator Arcanes are also quite handy in keeping you alive and so on. Now you may be wondering, what about weapons? Or what weapons should you get? Myself and many other creators have made tons of lists for you to go and pick what you want, but my biggest advice to you, I can't stress this enough, is just use what you think looks cool and what you enjoy. That is honestly all that matters. As long as you are having fun, that is the most important thing. I would, however, recommend you immediately start farming your Steelpath circuit every week so that you can start gathering the Incarnate weapons. Incarnate weapons are a cheat code and by far among some of the strongest weapons in Warframe right now. They are Warframe's endgame weapons per se. They are fun, they have gimmicks, they don't need much investment to start doing big damage. But again, I have to reiterate this, just play any Warframe, play any weapon that you want. The beauty of this game is any weapon in Warframe can work if you put enough time and investment into it. Now, if you have completed everything up until now and feel like you're still lacking in damage, then you can take it one step further. By now, I am sure you've heard the term CO scaling and so on, or condition overload type mods. These mods are the main reason most people absolutely shred Steelpath with their setups. Condition overload mods make Steelpath easy. They act as follows. You gain increased damage per status effect applied to enemies. This will be used in conjunction with a high status chance weapon, or a weapon that applies many status effects, or a primer. A primer can be in the form of your weapons or a companion primer. One of the best and easiest primer weapons is the Epitaph and the Nucor. There are many more options, but these are the easiest. The whole point of primers is to put as many status effects as possible on enemies so that you can scale your condition overload type mods. The more you apply, the more damage you do. It's that simple. If you want a good companion primer, the Deriga with Arc Coil and Prime Laser Rifle is very good, or just Laser Rifle, or a Hound with Synergized Prospectus. Most weapons, not all though, but most will definitely benefit from condition overload type mods. Insanely well. AoE damage, however, is not affected by condition overload. However, some weapons have a multiplicative bonus to CO scaling, which is huge. Bonus tips. This is something that's not really spoken about much, but as you progress in Steelpath, it is a good idea to slowly invest into your amps. There are some very important use cases for amps, and having them available when you work towards them, or just, when you get to that point, is just handy. And when you get access to Last Gasp, you will need a good amp and arcanes to be able to kill enemies easier to get back up after going down. The 147, 547, 177, and the 777 are really good options for this. I would also recommend using Eternal Eradicate and Eternal Onslaught for your amp arcanes too. This, of course, is for people who have not invested into the amps just yet and they're already in Steelpath. Another thing, get yourself energy pads to help you in a pinch when you run out of energy in Steelpath. Bind it to a keybind that is easy for you to remember. It's something that's just nice to have. And that pretty much sums up Steelpath. If you make use of all of these things that I mentioned in this video, how much form are you willing to invest into weapons and warframes, getting primed mods, getting all the arcanes that are expensive, or the expensive mods, you name it. Everything is up to you now. I have also just made a utility video for those of you who are interested. I go over all of the handy things in Steelpath to help you have a better experience. As long as you tick the boxes of not dying, dealing enough damage, and having enough energy sustain, then you don't need to worry. I hope you learned something new and enjoy Steelpath more. Have fun. Thank you so much for watching this video, and a huge thank you to our channel members. You guys are absolutely amazing. I will see you all in the next video.